The UK has fallen into its largest recession on record because of the contracting by more than 20% between April and June in the biggest slump of any major global economy. The recession, defined by 6 months in a row of falling output, is the first since the 2008 financial crash. The Chancellor, Rishi Sunak, said the figures confirmed that hard times were here and many more people are expected to lose their jobs. Here's our economics editor, Faisal Islam. Well, the Chancellor said that the UK is grappling with something unprecedented and warned there would be more job losses to come. Our business correspondent Emma Simpson has been speaking to 3 people in the East Midlands to find out what impact it is having on them and their businesses.
Africa is rising. The numbers are real. The momentum is visible. And the world is paying attention. Meanwhile, across the ocean, the United Kingdom, once a global economic superpower, is struggling through one of its most difficult financial periods in modern history, facing an astonishing $120 billion economic crisis. 2 regions, 2 trajectories, 1 global shift. For decades, Africa was portrayed as the world's poorest continent, defined by instability, corruption, and underdevelopment. But today, that narrative is collapsing as fast as the data is shifting. Africa is home to the world's youngest population, one of the fastest growing middle classes, and some of the highest GDP growth rates on Earth. More importantly, global powers are racing for African partnerships, minerals, logistics routes, and markets. Meanwhile, the United Kingdom is confronting an economic storm driven by post-Brexit trade collapse, a shrinking workforce, crippling debt, currency weakness, inflation, energy shortages, declining investment, and political instability. The country that once ruled 1/4 of the world is now fighting to stabilize its own domestic economy. The power of demographics. Africa's population is projected to reach 2.5 billion people by 2050, a massive consumer base and labor force. More than 60% of Africans are under 25. This is innovation, creativity, labor, economic productivity, and a future tax base. While developed nations like the UK are aging rapidly, Africa is getting younger. And youth equals growth. Investment inflows are exploding. Africa is attracting record-breaking investment from China, India, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, UAE, Qatar, Russia, United States, European Union. Foreign direct investment into Africa is now higher than the UK's in several sectors, especially energy, infrastructure, mining, digital technology, and transport. A global race is underway, and Africa is the prize. Africa's natural resources are fueling global industry. Africa controls 30% of the world's mineral reserves, 60% of global cobalt, 40% of global gold, over 90% of global platinum, massive oil and gas reserves, unexplored rare earth elements. In a world moving toward electric vehicles, renewable energy, and semiconductor technology, these minerals are essential, and they exist on African soil. Continental integration is strengthening trade. The African Continental Free Trade Area, AfCFTA, is the world's largest trade agreement by population, connecting 1.4 billion people. This transforms Africa into a unified market. The impact? Lower trade barriers, cheaper cross-border business, regional production hubs, millions of new jobs, stronger African value chains. This is something the UK lost after Brexit. Economic integration. Digital transformation is booming. Africa is skipping traditional development stages and jumping straight into the digital era. Mobile banking dominates East Africa. Nigeria and Kenya are major tech hubs. Rwanda is becoming Africa's digital capital. Fintech investments are rising. E-commerce is expanding. AI and robotics training centers are emerging. This leapfrogging phenomenon is accelerating Africa's economic rise. Brexit, the aftershock. In 2016, Britons voted to leave the European Union. 8 years later, the consequences are still unfolding. Businesses relocated. Foreign investment dropped. Supply chains broke. Trade costs rose. Exporters struggled. The UK lost access to the world's largest single market. This alone cost the economy over $100 billion in lost output, according to multiple financial estimates. A shrinking workforce. The UK has an aging population, lower birth rates, Fewer young people entering the workforce. A shortage of skilled labour. Tens of thousands of workers leaving since Brexit. Meanwhile, Africa's workforce is expanding rapidly. The contrast is staggering. Skyrocketing inflation and cost of living. The UK is experiencing the highest food inflation in decades. Unaffordable housing. Soaring energy bills. Declining purchasing power. Rising poverty levels. Many British citizens are working full-time yet unable to afford basic needs. Currency weakness and debt. The British pound has experienced major volatility. Declining global confidence. Weakening purchasing power. At the same time, the UK's national debt crossed £2.6 trillion. This limits government spending and slows growth even further. Political instability. 5 prime ministers in a few years. Repeating scandals. Confused policy direction. Economic mismanagement. Investors hate instability. And the UK has had plenty of it. The contrast between Africa and the UK isn't random. It's part of a larger global transformation. Power is moving east and south. Economic gravity is shifting away from traditional Western powers. Africa's partnerships with China, India, UAE, Saudi Arabia, Brazil, Russia, Turkey, are reshaping global economics. Africa is gaining negotiating power. African nations are now demanding fairer trade, retaining more resource value, developing their own industries, creating local manufacturing, negotiating better contracts. This is a major break from the past. The world needs Africa more than ever. For minerals, for markets, for labor, for agriculture, for logistics routes. Africa is becoming essential to the global supply chain. The UK is losing global influence because of economic contraction, reduced diplomatic weight, weakened military budget, business relocation, falling investment levels. The UK is struggling to maintain its global relevance. This global shift is visible in everyday life. In Africa, new highways in Kenya, mega ports in Tanzania, digital banking revolution in Nigeria, oil and gas expansion in Namibia, industrial zones in Egypt and Ethiopia, luxury real estate boom in Ghana, global mining companies entering Zambia and DRC. In the UK, rising food bank usage, workers struggling to pay rent, public sector strikes, NHS collapse, businesses shutting down, youth unemployment rising, currency devaluation impacting imports. 2 worlds, 2 realities, 2 economic destinies unfolding simultaneously. Africa is on track to become a global powerhouse, a key player in energy, technology, and trade, home to the world's largest workforce, a hub for innovation, a major geopolitical influencer. If the continent continues on this path, Africa could double its GDP by 2030. For the UK, economists predict slow growth for at least a decade, continued inflation, lower investment attraction, labour shortages, higher cost of living, reduced global political influence. Unless major reforms occur, the UK's decline may continue. The shift will affect global trade, currency dominance, investment flows, geopolitical alliances, mineral supply chains, manufacturing hubs, immigration patterns. Africa is no longer the continent of potential. It is the continent of progress. The UK is no longer the empire of endless power. It is a nation navigating crisis. The world is shifting. The balance is changing. And the next decade will redefine global power in ways we have never seen before.